Thank you for joining us. We're here together with Wilson of Isotx, the game developer of the popular game March of War. Thank you for being here, Wilson.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, first of all, before we're gonna go into the Q&A live, I would like to have an explanation on what is March of War. Can you explain to me exactly what March of War is and what it does for the community, the playing game community?
Well, basically, March of War allows, it's a combination of our world map where people fight for control of territories and turn-based tactical battles in which we play out in 3D environments where each one of 6 factions has a wide variety of different units, and basically winning those tactical battles then contributes to winning the territory battles on the world map.
Okay, and I understand this game is free to play, so you can download it on Steam as well as on the website at marchofwar.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. Yep. Okay. So we got a couple of questions lined up for the entire community. The community could have posted the questions on the forum as well as on the Steam group, and we picked out 20 questions for you to answer. If we have time left, we will answer a couple of live questions as well. That is, if we have the time left, and then we'll end up the Q&A, and then we'll move right on to the quiz. We'll get some prizes out for that as well. So, Wilson, are you ready for the questions?
Yeah, let's get started.
All right. We'll get started with question number 1. The first question comes from Ivanar1314 by way of forum. Thanks for your question. He asks, are you going to use any unit suggestions for the player in the future?
Yes. Well, obviously, we do plan to continue adding units to the game, and basically it comes down to what we determine each different faction needs in terms of what their kind of current strengths and weaknesses are regarding the types of units they have, the damage types they deal, the armor types they have, and all that sort of thing. If you have a unit suggested which fits, like the Alliance have plenty of heavy tanks already, so it's unlikely we're going to add another one of those anytime soon. But like a lighter scouting vehicle, which they could use, would be much more likely to actually get into the game. And as long as it fits the general art style of the faction, if our art director likes it, then it could definitely happen.
And how do the players actually suggest these kind of ways? Do they do that by forum, or do they send you personal messages? Or?
Both ways work, really. I mean, we've got a list of suggestions we've gathered from both, the forum threads about it, and I mean, our art director has a list of unit ideas he's been given. Known as Mirko Boma on the forums. He's quite often in chat and everything. So
okay, fair enough. Okay, let's go on to question number 2. This is a question also yet again from the forum. It's from Aria317, and she asks, TBS is one of the most impossible game genre to become an MMO game because of long wait for another player and many more. I assume that she's meaning this from PvP. So my question is, how did you overcome this problem? What thing did seriously inspire you to make this kind of game?
Well, I mean, first of all, I suppose it's the world map is important here because you don't have to be online at the same time as other players to compete with them in terms of the world map. And in PvE, obviously, you can play whenever you like. You can save in the middle of battles or whatever. So for PvP, it is a challenge. As any turn-based strategy game will run into. We've done our best to make the game modes fairly quick to play, so that it shouldn't take too long. And that's kind of that's the most we can really do there. It is always going to take a certain amount of time to finish a turn-based PvP battle, but if there isn't time for that, there's always PvE. And well, it's like it was something that wasn't out there before. So, and I think there's a much bigger kind of market for good turn-based strategy games than there are actually out there at the moment.
But as we are experiencing right now in game, we noticed that for waiting, we have to wait for a long time in order to find a partner within PvP. Is that something of a matching problem, or is there not enough community that currently willing to PvP at the moment?
I think we actually have another question about this later on regarding the matchmaking, which we'll probably get to it at that point. But yes, it's basically a compromise between finding a match in a decent length of time and matching you with somebody who is actually fairly equal in terms of skill.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Let's get to question number 3. This one is from Neo, based on the Steam group, so he posted this on the Steam group. Will there be an option for factions to ally for a set amount of time to fight battle together, perhaps cross-faction co-op? And I mean that they're meaning something like in-game when they make an alliance between 2 factions.
Yes, exactly. This is an interesting idea. It's something we've considered before because, of course, it is. You can already play cross-faction co-op in the skirmish mode. Obviously that doesn't give you rewards, but to have something like that incorporated into the world map itself would be very interesting. That said, we also want to be careful about having too many of these kinds of enforced alliances and such between factions, because it reduces the importance of player communication between and within factions, when you can just when somebody can just say, okay, peace treaty, and now players can't do anything about that except obey it. Whereas if you actually have to negotiate and keep talking to make sure that your high command doesn't start battles with a faction you don't want to start fighting with yet, then that makes things more interesting. So it's an interesting idea, but
I would imagine that this will also be a problem regarding some factions, their position. For instance, Shogun Empire, based in Asia, of course, actually only has one problem to deal with, which is the Soviet Union, if I'm correct. And that by that way, they would probably, in this kind of game option or game mode, they're gonna have to make an alliance in order to team up against, for instance, the Soviet Union, especially when the Soviet Union already has an ally that's working against the Shogun Empire as well. Is this an in-game mechanic problem as well as balancing problem, or?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of potential side effects in terms of how players will use it, how it will influence the faction dynamics. Because, for instance, having a peace treaty with someone, it means that you're safe from them, but it doesn't mean that then you are forming a group together. You technically can, but again, you have to actually discuss it, and that takes work. Whereas with an alliance, it kind of happens automatically, and suddenly you have the combined might of 2 factions against one, which could, it's probably going to end very badly for the single faction.
To be concrete, are you guys working on something like this on a game mode, or is that something that's still on the schedule ahead in the future?
Yeah, it's a possible concept for the future. It's not something we're working on at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get to question number 4. This one is from Thing1 on Steam Group. Thank you for your question. Will you make it so there is an area ocean battles? And this is something that I've noticed as well on a lot of question and demand, because we only have currently factions based on land or something like that. He asks also, if you do, will there be any new category to research by, like ships and boats?
Yes, this would of course be very cool, and I think we've had some concept art for boats for different factions and such, but it's basically a question of resources. Of course, it's not helped there by the fact we have the 6 different factions, all of which would need like a whole selection of naval units, which is a kind of a massive undertaking in terms of resources. On top of the fact that you would probably want different rules for for naval battles and such. You'd probably want some new features there, otherwise it could get kind of dull, because there's not that much going on in the sea in general. So
fair enough.
Without the whole terrain aspect, with a very limited terrain aspect, I imagine it would be a lot of work to do it properly. So it's not something that's.
Might this be something in terms of an extra kind of expansion, because this is actually something that would enhance the game a lot more, widen the options that you have, because up until now it's kind of straightforward at the moment. So if you have sea battles, for instance, or something like that, people can actually choose whether to fight on land or on sea, or what their speciality is.
Yes, that's exactly, and that is also another point, in that it would have to be incorporated into the world map in an effective manner. I mean, I suppose for now you could have it like blocking the sea routes, blockading ports and such, but that would also require thought. So it would basically have to it would effectively be a new game, basically, in terms of the sheer amount of content required. So it's again also not,
It's not right now on the development, but it's
No.
something for future plans, is it indeed?
Potentially, it's a big undertaking. So it's
It depends on how the game grows, I guess.
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get to question number 5. This one is from Color Copycat by way of forum. Thank you for your question. He asks, when will you recommence development of Iron Grip Sky Corsairs? And this is one of the previous games that Isotx made.
Yes, that was an interesting one actually, because it was something of an in-between step regarding the March of the March of War universe with the kind of alternate World War II kind of timeline, and the Iron Grip Marauders Warlord kind of era of more pure diesel steampunk and airships and such. And basically, we don't have any plans currently to recommence development for Sky Corsair. It's kind of doesn't quite fit into either universe fully now.
In between. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in between. There's, basically, you're what I'm understanding right here is that you're not abandoning the entire game, but it's not something that's currently a priority within the EZTX for development.
You could put it like that, yes. And a lot of these, quite a few of these questions will come down probably to there's a lot of stuff we would like to do. We have to pick carefully what to focus on.
Yeah, because you're only a group of, you're only the set amount of resource that you have within EZTX to develop, and March of War, of course, being #1 priority.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, understand. So let's get on to question number 6. Sorry. This is from Sergeant Pineapple by way of forum. Thank you for your question. He asks, what has influenced you guys in the creation of March of War? What movies, what books, what games, what universes?
I have to say, I actually came into my current position in terms of balancing and unit management a little bit later, after the initial kind of concept for March of War was already there. So I'm going to have to go more general, but obviously steampunk and dieselpunk. A lot of the stuff from Marauders and Warlord, again, yeah, that kind of airships, the kind of improvised technology and all that sort of thing. But we really like those aspects. But it did. Having all that set in like a separate fictional universe, we were concerned it kind of limited how much players could connect with it a lot of the time. It's easy to like the technology and such, but you don't feel such a connection to like the countries and the characters necessarily, which is one of the reasons we wanted to move to this alternate World War II kind of setting, because it gives people an immediate grounding, and you see the world map, where everything is, what to expect from each different faction, all that kind of thing. It just makes it much more. And then when you have that combined with like the typical kind of Sherman tanks and stuff combined with steampunk, dieselpunk technology and things, it's I think it's a very powerful effect. It's cool, basically.
But it is kind of the underdog currently within universes. I mean, I do understand that there's a lot of community, and whether it's in the game, the global gaming community or not, I don't know. But there's a lot of there's a set amount of community within the dieselpunk era. So that's really focusing on one specific type of gaming community that you're attracting to, if I'm correct, right?
Yes, that is also the issue, where it's obviously, again, the familiarity of World War II, that kind of, all the vehicles, the weapons, the combatants and such, it's much more familiar. So
the thing out of it is, to put a question next to the question that Pineapple asked is would have been maybe would it have been more handy to affiliate yourself with products, and this is actually an example that has been asked on the forum as well, like for instance Warhammer 40k or something like that, to have a close redirection towards that side and say like, this is the online game that we're having right now, and it's something like this.
That could be interesting, yes. But then, of course, again, it's already something that see, again, this kind of a few games have done this kind of thing. A few games, movies, and such have done the kind of World War II with unusual technology kind of setting. But it's still I think it's almost less. It's still kind of less common than, I don't know, the kind of typical Space Marines, that sort of thing. It's we wanted to do something at least a little bit different, rather than getting too close to a lot of these big established kind of universes and franchises and such.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get to question number 7. This one is from Fergie666. Some people choose their name. By way of Steam Group, thank you for your question. He asked, what features will you be adding to the battle groups to make them more than just a title place or on a player? What will you be adding as changes to co-op? Because if I'm understanding right now, battle groups is a little bit underpowered with the latest patch.
Yes, it was basically you used to need to be in a battle group, and then you could play co-op battles with people from your battle group. We removed that requirement because obviously it's just nice to be able to invite anyone to play co-op. So now it's just like anyone from your faction you can play co-op on the world map, and that does leave battle groups somewhat underloved. This is something we want to look at, and the main thinking at the moment is probably something to do with the world map. There's been a lot of good suggestions from the community regarding, battle groups being able to build structures in territories. Say, they can improve the defenses, they can build stuff to, increase the income of everyone in the battle group, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. In the past, we had the kind of faction projects where you build like a nuke which would like instantly capture a territory, or the air invasions where you can attack anywhere on the map without needing a connection to it. Those kinds of things would also be a good something that battle groups could manage and produce themselves. And regarding co-op, because I believe you also asked about that, we don't have any particular plans for like big changes there. One good suggestion we've had is like increasing the rewards when you play co-op, because it just does take that much longer. So that's something we're definitely going to look at.
Is this also something, because at the moment the battle groups are currently, like you said, a little bit underloved. But I imagine that when you develop something for the battle groups in order to make it a little bit more interesting to play within a battle group, you want to look at what is an active battle group and what isn't an active battle group as well, I assume. Because in a lot of other MMO games, when you create, for instance, a corporation, a guild or something else, you want to do it for something that you want to keep it active, not only by way of chat, but by way of communication or seeing each other's stuff as well. Is there something that you're going to enhance within the battle groups on that side as well?
It's yes, it probably. Communication options as well, like especially for the high command and faction leaders, for instance, is something we've also had some good suggestions about, and it would definitely be good to do. So that kind of like for allowing like high commanders and stuff to stand out more in the chat and things, so they can better pass on their plans to the rest of the faction and such. If we have those kinds of things, that would probably also, apply to battle groups. So, senior people in battle groups can better communicate within the rest of the battle group. And if it is, if battle groups do get the ability to add stuff to the world map, it kind of, automatically requires them to, stay active, because territories change hands, of course. So you can build up a lot of stuff, but eventually like those territories are probably going to get captured, especially if you're like not paying attention and not fighting to defend them. So over time, like whatever battle groups build up, if it is on the world map, or if they don't act to protect it and such and maintain it, then it is going to just get it'll get destroyed or captured or whatever. So
something like that. Okay, thank you. Let's get to question number 8, which is from Perry Winkle on the Steam group. Thank you for your question. Are you planning to patch the shredder? Because now, if the enemy uses a chopper first turn, the only way to win is killing
it with a shredder itself.
Yeah.
And then the shredder doesn't see far enough to shoot it down.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is talking about a Republic Bell helicopter in assault games. And I'm not completely convinced that a shredder is the only way. It's definitely a good option if you can get the line of sight to it, because obviously the shredder is designed to combat air units, but the bells themselves, they're very weak. They're weak enough to regular small arms fire. Even like Manchurian infantry or whatever will damage them perfectly well. And the toxic spray on the bell has a 2-turn cooldown, so it's not exactly a counter to infantry units. So if and the one of the balancing aspects of the shredder is the fact it does not have incredible line of sight. So if you want to find the bell to avoid it or engage it with your normal infantry, then maybe a light tank would even be a better option there.
But I can imagine that point-wise, this is something that are not of an option until mid-game or something like that when playing PvP. I mean, for instance, at the start of the game, like Periwinkle said, you can start turn 1 with a chopper, but engaging with a medium tank will require you a set amount of command points, if I'm correct, right?
If you wanted, the thing is, the Empire light tank it's actually cheaper than the shredder, so the only issue is that it can't actually engage the Bell helicopter itself, but if the question is finding it, then you can use your regular infantry to attack it, and you should at least be able to scare it off. So.
Okay, fair enough. So let's get to question number 9. This is one from HRichter4 on the forum. Thank you for your question. She asks, will Illusion 2 airstrike command card like EA Commanders released soon or in the next episode, which is still far away?
Yes, there is, of course, a forum thread about this. The community's come across quite a few of these in-progress units in terms of portraits and even screenshots and such, which is dedication.
Yeah.
But all these units are in various states of completion, of course. Just because we have a portrait or because we have a model does not necessarily mean that the unit itself is fully ready to be added to the game. And on top of that, it depends on when factions, what units they need and when they need them. The Alliance Commandos, for instance, they haven't been added to the game yet. The Alliance already has a lot of deals page units, whereas other factions like the Empire and the Junta are not. They haven't had so many deals page units, which is why, for instance, you've seen the Junta and the Empire recently got new units added, and the Alliance has not, because we want to improve the balance between factions in terms of the number of units they have available and such. Regarding the command cards, like the IL-2, that would likely happen as all factions would get a new command card, say. So it's a case of when we have something ready for all of them.
So right now, at the moment, you only have it ready or in a set amount of development stage for the EA command card, but you don't have it for the rest of the factions in order to make it balanced enough to implant it to the game?
Exactly, yes. We don't. We will probably add a few new units individually, perhaps, because the factions are already they already have different numbers of deal space units and such available. But command cards are still balanced at the moment. So.
Will there be any expansion to that as well? I mean, I imagine that you're gonna put more command cards within the game, or when you implant these kind of new command cards, will there be old command cards removed?
Again, depends on the situation. I would assume command cards, we would just add new ones, but units might see adjustments. Like the Reaper used to be in the Junta tech tree, and that was removed and made a deal space units to make space for the Panther armored car instead. So it all depends on the individual cases.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get to question number 10. This is from Zydra on the forum. Thank you for your question. What is the fascination with suicide units? The dirigible, the kamikaze attack, the nuke truck command card, the demo truck. What's the idea behind this?
Right. Yes, again, as I said before, I actually came into my current position a bit after, much of what had already been in development for a while, so I wasn't involved with the faction units before the first episode. So I can't really comment on the thinking specifically. For the nuke truck, there was a balancing element involved there, because the one-time use nature of the nuke truck means that we can make it more powerful. Basically, it would be harder to do if we had a nuclear artillery unit, which could fire, I don't know, every turn or every few turns or whatever. It would be difficult to balance that in a way where it's affordable to actually use in a battle, but not so but still be powerful, because you'd have to probably limit the damage it could do, and then it wouldn't really feel like it's a proper a nuclear weapon and such. So with the nuke truck, it can be pretty powerful and still affordable to deploy. So
okay, fair enough. Is this something that you're gonna develop in the future as well, like more of suicide units for the other factions as well?
I don't really think we have any particular plans there. It's perhaps interesting for a few units. I don't think you want to go overboard with it either. It requires careful use.
And then again, you get around with the balancing issue as well, since if you give any faction kind of suicide units on how powerful they are, then people start to misuse the unit itself and by way of winning PvP battles faster.
Yeah, stuff like that. And also, it's kind of, I know, personally speaking, I don't find suicide units the most interesting of mechanics, but so.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's get to question number 11. This one is from Sri, if I'm correct, from the Steam group. Thank you for your question. He asked, will you address the toxin pool exploit in siege mode? The unit can beat master siege mode in 3 to 5 minutes by placing 3 or 4 toxic pools and just hit the end of the turn all the time.
We actually have quite a few AI improvements to Siege lined up. Our AI guy has been doing a lot of work there recently. Unfortunately, it was only kind of that only reached a point where it was ready for testing fairly shortly before we released the patch on Friday. So we couldn't include that into the release because we just didn't have time to test it. There's quite a lot of stuff there, so there's potential for things to go wrong. It's obviously hugely complicated AI, so we want to test that properly, and then we want to get that into the game as soon as possible, basically, and that will, include a fix for that exploit. And if it turns out to be more complicated, I'm sure we will do a smaller patch or hotfix to deal with that issue.
Okay. Is that something that the other factions have as well? I mean, do they have, for instance, a unit that can exploit them to win in 3 or 5 minutes as well on a siege mode?
It would probably be possible for some factions, but it's mainly a Junta issue, I believe.
Okay, so it's kind of like, because in the end I think it will have an influence on the longer term if multiple players will do this, basically when you're capturing a terrain and you're constantly going siege mode.
Which is of course why it's something we definitely want to deal with quickly. But
Okay, let's get to question number 12. This one is from, and this is going to be a very difficult name, Nishi32 from Steam Group, if I'm correct. If I did not pronounce your name right, I'm terribly sorry. But thank you for your question anyway. He asked, when are you doing PvP Assault? Why does Team 1 get, for instance, less units and
people at manpower and no plus units on the first turn. Right, well, this is to balance an issue known as first turn advantage. Basically, because it's a turn-based game, of course, somebody has to go first. I mean, unless you have simultaneous turns, which we don't. But which means that the person who moves first is going to be able to reach central points before the second player, assuming they both have units with the same speed and such. With faster units, it means that the first player can often, they have more opportunity to quickly contest enemies who are capturing points and such. And in order to balance this advantage, we give the second player a few more starting resources. This means they can basically compensate for their, the fact it's going to be a little bit harder for them to capture points as efficiently as the first player. It means they can either deploy maybe perhaps an extra unit to capture. They could maybe take a faster unit or a stronger unit. It basically gives them a few extra options, which will hopefully, compensate for the fact that they are at a disadvantage in terms of, speed of being able to get to points and such.
But wouldn't it be a more easier solution to let in a PvP battle, for instance, have both players set out their units at the same time? I mean, it will save time as well as it would save these kind of changes in the game.
Well, both players do deploy at the same time, but then somebody still has to make the first move is the problem. It's basically you kind of, there's nothing you can really do about that.
Otherwise it would clash with each other when, for instance, 2 units at the same time are trying to capture a zone, for example. Yeah, I can understand that. So, this is something that will enhance a little bit of a more balancing issue as well on the future, or?
Yeah, we'll continue to look at this. Like we recently increased it so the second player gets a little bit of extra engineering as well as just commands, so they can now also deploy perhaps a stronger starting vehicle or maybe a couple of weaker ones. It's again more options for that player.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's get to question number 13, which is from MainQ by way of Steam Group. Thank you for your question. He asks, when do the nations at the world map get a real target, like objective of the week or month, maybe with war with creature hordes like a bot faction? And I've been thinking about this as well. I mean, there is something like not necessarily a faction that you could use, but for instance pirates or militia or something like that.
That kind of neutral kind of world map factions could be interesting, but there's a lot of development effort required there. There's a lot of interface stuff. It's like kind of how do they behave, who do they attack, that sort of thing would be it would be a big issue for neutral factions on the world map. As far as other real targets, like weekly, monthly objectives, we did of course do this basically in the past with the episodes we released, where factions got particular special goals and then got extra rewards for achieving those by the end of the month. It's possible we'll do something similar again there, but I think we're currently more looking towards kind of more general, more player-led instances, such as I think we have another question later regarding making territories more valuable, which is the same kind of issue. It's we want players to drive stuff as much as possible. So kind of these kinds of big objectives set by us developers. It's interesting, but it would be better if you get big interesting events based on player interactions.
Is this because what I've noticed is that there is a set amount of AI involved when you're, for instance, playing the PvP battles, and with the PvP battles there are creatures within the map that attack both units. Is that something that's going to be extended as well in the game? Because it feels like at the moment like you either have a choice of A, getting a small amount of damage from the AI, or B, for facing up against your opponent's enemy unit. Is this something that is going to be more of a radical change within that PvP mode?
It's probably going to remain similar to how it is now in terms of some maps will have these neutral creatures and others will not. It's and I think most will not. In fact, it should be it's something meant to be somewhat special, like the tech buildings you can capture on certain maps. It's same kind of thing to make the game a little bit different to a standard battle, but it's not something we want in every single battle.
Because at the moment it's kind of like, and I've heard this from different kind of communities as well, a little bit grindy, and giving a variation in PvP or PvE battles for that matter regarding these kind of things as a set amount of AI that you can capture and do at your control or command. Would that make the game a little bit more interesting for these game modes?
Yeah, that's a fair point. But I think we would also, rather kind of focus on. It's obviously better to address the core issues of why it might feel a little bit grindy or such, rather than trying to cover it up as such by throwing in these. Ideally, they should complement and they should make an already interesting game even more interesting, rather than kind of trying to compensate for the fact if a game isn't that interesting to start with. I don't think we need. I don't think it's something we need to do for every single game. So.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get to question number 14. This one is from Kane Lish from the Steam Group. Thank you for your question. He's got a quite long question, so let's get into it. With the increased focus on PvP battles, will there be any balancing for the matching that will go on? Currently, low-level players with few units get paired with higher-level players with higher-tier units that make PvP less enjoyable for the new players.
We touched on this earlier, of course, and the main point is it's that balance between matching you with somebody equal to your level of skill and not having you wait too long for a battle. We have also recently already made some changes which should tighten up. You're more likely to get someone closer to you in level now. We'll continue to adjust that if necessary. But I think pretty much anyone who has ever played a game with matchmaking knows that sometimes it just doesn't quite work out. we want to do the best we can, and there's a lot of elements involved in our matchmaking as well, because as he says, the number of units somebody has, their level, how many games they've won, how good they are, all that kind of thing. Because low-level players with against high-level players who aren't good at the game, generally, with skill you can still beat those higher tier units. They're certainly not intended to be flat out better than the basic units, like the standard kind of anti-tank infantry that most factions have, for instance. Those are very capable of taking on the heaviest tanks and such if they're used well. If the other person's careless with their super heavy tank, it's still going to get taken out by a well managed anti-tank infantry, which everyone has from the start. So
would this not be an interesting option for instance, implanting the battle group, where a battle group versus a battle group can put in a set amount of levels regarding the players that they have in the battle group? For instance, battle group A and battle group B fight each other. They can put 20 levels within their battle group to fight the opponent, and they need to make up on which players they're gonna use with the levels that they have.
Yeah, that could be an interesting system actually, and hopefully lead towards kind of a natural balancing system within battle group conflicts.
It would take a lot out of the hands of the March of War AI and more it on the players and their skills.
Again, which is their skills, their personal decision on how best to win a battle. Yeah, that could be interesting actually.
Okay, let's get to question number 15, which is from Cherrycore from Steam Group. Thank you for your question. The question is, at the moment we have a large difference between the global game and the actual battles. Which victory in the first entirely reliant on a small, rapid and very grindy little games? Are there any plans to extend the small battles to larger conflicts, maybe 4 versus 4 PvP or some slots by the AI, or something of small competing games?
Well, we are certainly looking at options for larger battles, particularly, to give people more opportunity to use some of the high-end, the more expensive, higher-tier units. The issue, of course, with, say, 4v4 PvP is that the more players you add, the longer it takes, especially, 8 players having to take their turns in order. That would be a long game. We have, of course, recently made some changes to PvP battles at, level 15 and above, where those players get more resources to start with, so they can play more units, they can play the larger units more quickly, and then they earn more battle points for winning those battles. That is, we've done that in part to examine how these kinds of the larger scale games, or games with more units or larger number or more high level units, how that might work out is something we're keeping a close eye on it, of course, and we'll as always make adjustments and changes as necessary. But we're also looking at a PvP option for PvE option for larger battles against the AI, which obviously has the advantage that it doesn't matter how long it takes to play, because you can stop and you can take breaks at any time and such. But so we're looking at options. We're trying some things out here.
Because at the end of the entire story, it's actually enhancing or giving a wider perspective on playing with your friends within the battle group or cross-faction or something like that, to do something more together. And so player A can, for instance, choose to just do 1 versus 1 because that's more type of his game. But in the other sense, a group of people that are constantly playing other games together as well now play March of War, and they want to put them and their resources and their time into something larger than just a 1 versus 1 grindy battle. Yes,
which is, and we definitely want people to be able to do that. It kind of comes to what we said earlier about increasing the rewards for co-op, because it takes longer to play these games. Any kind of multiplayer game will take longer, so we will adjust the rewards to make that worthwhile.
And then again, I assume that the amount of resources that you want to put in is going to be a little bit bigger as well, because you want to be committed to the entire thing.
And I think you already get that to a point with 2v2 games, because of course all players share all their points they own and such. So you get both players deploying their own units and such, and it generally already leads to larger battles in that way. But
okay, fair enough. Let's get to the next question, which is question number 6 from Scott the Hellfire from Steam Group. Thank you for your question. When will you make unit customization possible? And this is something that a lot of players have been waiting for at the moment. There's an in-game phase where you're gonna have to spend your in real life money in order to customize a unit, if I'm correct, right?
Well, it wouldn't have to be real life money. It would be, it would still be doable with in-game resources. That's something we don't want to make gameplay features like this ever something that would, only be available to paying players. That's why, like the skins and such, for instance, they cost our premium currency, but that's because they don't have an effect on the game. People should always be able to earn, everything in the game via in-game resources. That's something we're very strict about. As for unit customization itself, we've of course recently been focused on post-launch support and all the various issues that have come up, and making improvements that people have been asking for following the release and all that. So unit customization, it isn't a priority for us right now. There's also, again, an issue like we mentioned earlier with the naval battles, that there's a lot of content creation required to implement it properly, rather than just as kind of a token system. So in order to do it properly, we want to make sure we give it the attention it deserves. And currently, there's a lot of demand on our resources, so we don't have a particular schedule for customization right now.
Wouldn't it be something that would attract new community a little bit faster, simply because they have something that's completely unique to their own playing, their own kind of little army?
Yes, exactly. Like that would be the strength of it. But in order for that to actually be the case, you need like enough customization options that what you have is actually, it has a good chance of being kind of unusual or fairly unique, at least. If it's only a choice of, I don't know, like 2 or 3 different turrets on one tank, then it doesn't quite get the feeling across. So you need enough content for it to be interesting, and then that comes back to how long will it take to produce and such.
Okay. Let's get to question number 7, which is from Lord Cyphus from the forum. Thank you for your question. I have the question: are you considering making more air units for this game? This is a high-end topic because I've seen it come by a lot of times already. I find there was a lack of air unit in Mart of War, seeing at some factions only have 1 air unit.
Yes, well, this is of course it's a possibility, but because it's always been the case that air units have been higher tier units generally. The Republic is an exception, as I'll get into in a moment, but they're high tier units. They're less common, and we currently want to kind of keep that the case in general. The Republic, of course, have more air units, and they have cheaper ones as well. Because that is it's one of their special faction traits, which we expanded on in the episode involving them, and so we don't want every faction to feel the same in terms of having that kind of choice of air units. It always comes down to what fits factions thematically and what they need in terms of units. But most factions still have weaknesses or kind of holes in their lineup of units, which would make more sense to fill first before adding extra air units.
But is it something that you guys experiencing as developers of a little bit of an imbalance? For instance, when a Republic player plays, for instance, against a player of the Soviet Union, does the player of the Soviet Union have difficulty to counter these kind of air units?
Again, this is most factions have dedicated anti-air units, and like for most factions, for the Soviet Union and the Republic in particular, their basic anti-tank infantry, the RPG team for the Soviets, it's a very, very good anti-air unit. It's so most. I don't think it's really the case that faction, especially by the time you're high enough level, you have enough units yourself to be facing these higher level air units, you're going to have options available.
Okay. So by way of command or by way of other kind of units that you currently have at your disposal?
Basically, yes. Like you get like counters to air units in the tech tree before you get to the air units themselves. So.
But I can imagine that for instance, for players that are just starting the game or having to go up against a higher level Republic player, that's going to be a tremendous problem. I mean, wouldn't it be automatically a game loss for the new player?
It somewhat depends on the faction. It would have to be quite an extreme level difference. And at the end of the day, like the Alliance, the Republic player would still need to, take an advantage in the battle in terms of capturing engineering and command points. Say he wants to put out like a flying fortress, then that's it's not cheap. So there's plenty of chance for the lower level player to, if they play aggressively enough, if they force him to spend his engineering on other things or his command on other things, then he's not going to be able to get that flying fortress out there.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get to question number 18. We're almost at the end of it. We've got a couple more questions to go. This question is from Darkest Night from the forum. Thank you for your question. What are you guys planning for the future? Continue with the TBS games or maybe something more? I imagine that you guys are currently still focused on March of War, making it a success or something like that. But is there something in the racks for the future and possibly another game as well?
That's it. We don't have too much in the way of specific, but basically, yes, we're focused on March of War for now, and any future projects are likely to be turn-based strategy games again, because it's we've been working on turn-based strategy for some time now, and it makes sense to stick with what you know. There's plenty of scope for interesting new ideas and such to be executed here.
Is it also a little bit because of not being that much turn-based strategy games anymore left? I mean, we know basically the Civilization series, and it's all kind of a little bit dying out because the game community now prefers nowadays a little bit more of an FPS or MMO kind of type game. Is it something that you guys are feeling that you're more of the crusaders to continue the TBS gaming, basically?
Yeah, there's something of that in it. I mean, I think actually we've done fairly well over the last few years in terms of there's been some good quality turn-based strategy games out there, but I still think there's not as many as a lot of people would like. I think I think there's a strong audience there of people who do like this kind of slower paced kind of game. It's a bit more thoughtful, or just a bit more. I don't know. It has something that you don't quite get the same in like an RTS or an FPS game. So it's something we want to continue working on.
It's something because if you look at the genre that you guys have made your game in, and we know that a lot of the other competition that you guys have to go up against are, for instance, browser games, and they a lot of the times have the disadvantage that, for instance, one turn takes in real life 2 or 3 days in order to make, or even an entire day.
Yeah, that's also a good point in that kind of more high quality turn-based strategy games, especially in terms of visuals as well, but also something where it's about the actual kind of the tactical game itself. Like we don't have like an energy system in March of War or whatever, because that would be it takes away from the turn-based strategy itself. So there's that too. Yeah.
All right. Let's get to question number 19 from Ace Richter 4 again, by way of forum. Thank you for your question. She asks, what was the main idea for changing for the Conqueror tank and the Vulture tank? After playing with them against all factions, I can't find their role now. Maybe Wilson can explain us, because it's not what the Soviet Union knows as well.
Right. Yes, this is that's 2.0, of course. Right. The Conqueror tank. The thinking with the current setup, it's been reduced in cost, and it's now lighter and faster. The idea was to offer the Union a cheaper tank, which is similar to the reason the Churchill for the Alliance became cheaper, also down to 4 engineering, because both of those factions had like several kind of heavier tanks at 5 or 6 engineering cost, and it's more useful to have more variety, I think. And in order to keep the Conqueror tank distinct from the Churchill, I made it faster, but it has a little less firepower to it. if this is obviously it's quite a big change for the Conqueror. It used to be like a much heavier tank, so it will continue to I'll continue making changes there until it until it becomes it starts to fill a role and people feel it's useful basically. I'm not surprised if it maybe feels a little bit if people don't quite feel comfortable with it yet. It probably maybe needs a few more minor adjustments before it really nicely fits into a good position within the Soviet army. So as for the Vulture tank, that's part of a larger kind of a series of changes as well to the artillery in the game, because obviously there's been a lot of discussion regarding how artillery can be too powerful, particularly in Blitz. It kind of comes down too much to artillery. So the thinking was to try and make each individual artillery piece more unique and a bit more specialized. The Vulture tank is quite an extreme example because it's gone from a general kind of all-round artillery to an anti-armor artillery basically, and that is very kind of that is quite specific. But it also means that you can't just throw them down kind of whenever, because it'll be decent against everything. You need to think about whether you actually want to make use of one or not. But
okay.
Because again, it's part of an ongoing process. A few other artillery pieces from different factions also saw changes, and this is only like the first step. Obviously, there's going to be issues will crop up in terms of how it affects overall balance and all that kind of thing. So it's not like it's changed and that's how it is going to be forever now. Like it changed once, it can change again. It's again, until it becomes something that fits in nicely without being, too powerful or whatever. So.
Okay. Let's get to question number 21. This one is from Knife to the Face from Steam Group. Thank you for your question. And he asks, when will we see rewards for holding territory? And this is something that's kind of a popular topic as well, because at the moment you just capture territory and you have something to show at the world map, and that's basically it.
You have the faction objectives as well, but yes.
Yeah.
But yes, this is again something we want to this is something we're hoping to be able to implement fairly soon. Of course, always done when it's done, but and the current thinking is probably a fairly limited number of territories which will grant moderate boosts of some type. Probably battle points, of course, because that's the overall goal to own more of the world map. But we're probably looking at that rather than say larger numbers of countries each giving smaller boosts. But we also want to be careful that we don't end up having the world map, kind of devolve into just fighting between a few key points. So we're still discussing internally how best to handle that. But yes, we do want to actually make particular territories valuable, especially valuable to hold.
Is that something that maybe be a good combination between people that can actually build something that gives them, or a faction that builds something on a terrain that gives them a little set amount of bonus or something?
Yeah, again, and of course that's where the battle groups would fit in nicely if they can, add stuff to the world map which affects how tough it is or how many resources. Like if it gives a bonus or something, then that fits in very nicely because then it's all player driven. Say you get a bunch of battle groups and they all build battle point boosting things in a certain territory. Then of course that territory then becomes a priority target for every other faction. So that would be that's kind of would be an ideal kind of longer term thing to aim for, I think. But for now, yes, it's we're looking at territories chosen by us, which will give boosts.
I can imagine that if you give this out to the players as well, there will be a balancing issue as well, since some territories would be in such a unique position that it's very hard to recapture or start attacking that zone simply because of their position.
Yeah, like for instance, where is it? Like the Falklands. In South America is probably quite tricky to reach. Although the ports are also the harbours around the map are also intended to help with that somewhat. In that you don't have to fight your way manually across land and sea lanes to get places. You can use the harbours to more quickly get to a particular location. But But yes, that is something we would have to consider carefully to make sure that there aren't, particular territories which are just the main place where everyone builds everything, because it's that much more defensible. So,
Okay.
and of course, again, the event groups the faction projects could help with that in terms of, say, like battle groups can build nukes to immediately like destroy everything in a territory, for instance, at great cost. Then that's going to automatically kind of balance it out in that people can build all their stuff in one territory if they like, and it makes it easier to defend, but it also makes it vulnerable to that kind of
large scale attacks.
That kind of attack. Yeah. So
okay.
There's a lot of options here where
And that's something that we might want to see in the future as the game evolves. Okay.
Yes, it's all.
Let's get to question number 22, and this will be the second last question. The last question will actually be the winner for the entire contest. So let's get to the last question that's not the winner. This one is from Eldridge by way of Steam Group. Thank you for your question. He asks, why did you devs choose to put merc in front of your names? And I assume that they mean in-game chat.
Yes, it's what identifies developers within the in-game chat, and this is actually a question I can't specifically answer. It was chosen by our community team. I think, if I recall correctly, the idea was to have something that kind of fits within the game world, and it's a little bit different to maybe the standard developer tags and such you kind of see. So I suppose, mercenary kind of works because I guess it at least fits with our ability to enter any chat anytime, which often surprises new players if they're not familiar with the system yet. That somebody from an entirely different faction is just talking in their faction chat. But it's because obviously each merc character belongs to a certain faction, but we're not actually aligned particularly often. I mean, a lot of us have our favorites, but obviously we check out all factions. So.
Is this something that lies maybe open secretly for something that you guys gonna do for yourself in the future? Like, for instance, you know what, guys, we're gonna make an AI faction, but it's gonna be the merc faction, and as game developers, we are gonna be the merc faction.
That would be quite amusing, but
I mean that would open up something of an option as well, where basically the entire world map will fight against the development team because there's basically the scumbags. No offense, then of the world map. Would that actually be something that you guys might consider in the future?
Well, on one hand, it would be kind of funny, maybe kind of potentially interesting, but the difficulty is, where would we like apply our efforts? Because as we've said before, obviously we want the players to drive this stuff, and even if the merc faction didn't turn out to be that dangerous or effective, it would still put some pressure on whoever we choose to attack or whatever. So it would probably be a bit too much involvement in what should be down to the players, really. Like, it would be kind of unfair if somebody lost a war or whatever because they were being attacked by the devs. It's
I can understand that, but on the other side, it leaves the option open for multiple factions to actually pick you as a target rather than you guys attacking a faction. Like, for instance, you don't have to start a war with a particular faction or something like that, but you can steal away resources from that faction or bonuses that they normally have, and that would give them a kind of a revenge feeling in order to start like, let's go for the merc team now.
Perhaps, but no, I also think we probably wouldn't last that long either.
Is that basically because you guys don't play? How much time do you guys put into the game as playing hours in terms besides of development?
It obviously varies a lot between various members of the team. Some people play more than others. Obviously, the testers are kind of an interesting case because they obviously play the game, a lot, but they're not always on the actual on the live server as such because we have a testing environments and such. So I wouldn't want to guess, but quite a lot of people are there. Like obviously people are in chat. Some people are in chat a lot without necessarily playing any battles or whatever. Particularly after working hours, but Um,
Is the entire Isotx team involved in the chat and in the game, or are there people that are just working at Isotx making the game but have no interest in, for instance, socializing with the community?
Um, I think pretty much everyone in the team has yeah, they have, obviously we all have merc accounts, and most people are, you know, pop up in the chat now and then, but a lot of it depends on, you know, how busy they are and how closely their work is kind of connected to I
The
guess
game itself.
yeah, because, you know, I mean, like especially, you know, kind of the more complicated stuff, you obviously kind of want to focus on your work, and you can't really kind of multitask between that and the chat or whatever. Whereas what's like, you know, balancing the kind of stuff I do, it can work better between, you know, being able to, like, you know, check the chat, talk with players a little bit, then maybe make a few changes or test some stuff. I think it depends a lot on, you know, the kind of work people do and what their current tasks are at the moment. Like sometimes I will check the chat and stuff quite often, and other times I like won't get a chance to really look at it in a given day. So
Okay. So are we ready to go to the winner of the contest?
yeah.
Okay. This is question number 22. It's the winner, and for our perspective, this was the best question asked for the development team for merc-wilson in order to win the veteran pack, if I'm correct. This was from Army Monger by way of forum. Congratulations. He asks, your job in Isotx appears to be a person who has the job of balancing everything in this game. Considering there are 6 factions in this game, how do you determine what exactly needs a buff or a nerf to all 112 units in the game?
Yeah, that's basically the the $1 million question, really, isn't it? And effectively, well, the main thing is a lot of it does come down to community feedback. All the players out there, I think we've been extremely lucky to have an excellent community within the game. Generally, people are, you know, they're very mature, very thoughtful, and they often, mostly, seem to avoid the kind of faction bias you normally get in a lot of games when people, you know, are making their balance suggestions. It's, you know, it's like everything in my faction should be better. Everything in every other faction needs to be made worse. We actually have a lot of people who you know, a lot of people who play across various factions or all the factions, they're happy to, they will have a favorite faction, but they're still happy to, you know, point out when, you know, okay, I think this is a bit too far, this is a bit too much, and all that. And that kind of player feedback is often the starting point to, you know, probably most of the balance changes I make, because it is my, you know, it is my job to balance everything, but that is also not the only work I have to do. So basically, it's important to have, you know, people bring issues to my attention, and then I can look at them, and then, especially if there's, you know, often on the forums you get a lot of good discussion about different options and different people's thoughts on things. So that kind of stuff is often, you know, the catalyst for balance changes that happen. So yeah, once people point out an issue, I will, you know, have a look, maybe talk about it a bit on the forum or in the chat or whatever, and get a few opinions, and obviously based on my knowledge of the units and the stats and such, evaluate whether it's necessary to make any changes.
Okay, and how many people are actually in the Isotx team are involved with balancing the game?
Let me see. Well, of course, the test team, which is about 4 people, they obviously will come up with to me with you know, balance suggestions and comments and such. But obviously they're also focused on, you know, technical issues and such. They don't have you know, a lot of times they really, you know, just do balancing you know, tests and stuff. So again, this is, you know, the community is always kind of going to play, the community is always going to be able to play more games than the dev team can, and certainly more than I on my own can. Even if I was, you know, doing nothing but playing the game, there's still, you know, way more hours of experience within the community. So it would be just, you know, kind of stupid not to make use of that that knowledge and that experience. So
But
So yeah.
this is also a strength within Isotx. I mean, if you look at, for instance, other game developers, and I'm not going to mention any names, then the strength of Isotx is actually that they're continuously contacting and communicating with their community, and that's a vital part. That's something that the global community the global gaming community wants in every game. Isn't that something that makes your job as a balancing dev a little bit more easier as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's well, yeah, as I'd say, it's kind of it's probably invaluable, in fact, really. And it's it's as I said, we're lucky to have a great community, so it's all very pleasant as well. Actually, it's you don't get a lot of really angry people or whatever. Everyone's like, even when people are upset about particular balance changes or things within the game, they normally still manage to be polite or at least reasonable about it. And I mean, that's all you can ask for, really. It's good to have people who are passionate about the game. So, and in return, we try and communicate with people and discuss these kinds of issues and things. And as I've said, sometimes I'll be on the chat more or less. Sometimes I'm faster or slower to respond to forum topics and stuff. But I do always read those kinds of forum topics, even if I don't have a chance to reply. So, and more often at least, you'll get you'll get a response of some kind. We try to do that because obviously it's something the community wants, and it's useful for us as well. That kind of feedback it's good stuff. So.
Okay, well, that's the winning question for you all. Congratulations, Army Monger. Let's go over a little bit on this is something of the other game developer that's currently in chat, Mechanical Angel, over the patch notes that have been going on recently. You guys just implemented a new patch into March of War. Can you explain a little bit on what the patch changes within the game mechanics previously to the game?
Yeah, the last patch had quite a few interesting changes, like well, for instance, the changes to a high level PvP with high resources. That's an interesting thing we're trying there, in terms of letting people use some of their higher level units and stuff more often, and also increasing the rewards for playing at those levels in terms of battle points, so you can have more impact on things. There were quite a lot of balance changes in there, including the artillery adjustments, and I'll in fact just have to open that up myself to remind me exactly what all the changes were. But and there were obviously the usual selection of general fixes and improvements, which always come along with new patches.
Is there something at the moment going on right now that you guys are already working for the next patch as well?
Let me see. Well, there's obviously those siege AI improvements, which I'm quite excited about. Other than that, it's mostly, I think, it's progress towards larger features. So.
And when can we expect the next patch? You can give a little bit of an insight on when the next patch will be.
It's one of those questions. It's always impossible to answer, because it depends on how the testing goes, what issues occur, and what new issues appear. Like if there is some kind of serious issue that we want to fix, then we might need to say delay a patch to include that fix, or we might need to do a separate small a hot fix to directly deal with the issue, or and all that then has impact on when the larger patches will appear. So obviously we're trying to put them out as fast as possible, and making sure they're still properly tested, and it's a good use of our time, rather than just putting out small patches every day or something, which would be a lot of effort for not really worth the result.
And as last question, this comes out from Team ProPixel on behalf of the community within March of War. Can you give a small little secret out on something that's coming up that's not announced just yet? There's something that that's something that's within Isotx team only discussion within the dark secret rooms that you guys have it there.
Well, Mm, I I'm not sure that I can.
There is nothing going on within Isotx that's like, yeah, I shouldn't be talking about this, but you know, especially for this time only, I'm gonna do it.
Mm, I don't think, and actually, I think we're generally fairly open about what we're considering and such. I mean, again, you talk to the community a lot, and so I think most of anything that's that interesting is probably already out there, actually.
So there's no possibility for leaking at the moment.
No, I guess that's the downside of having that kind of communication, that you can't really make any impressive surprise reveals and stuff. So,
Okay, okay.
so
Uh,
sorry, but
yeah, well, you know, it's always fair to try, and if we can get a little bit of information
yeah,
out, then we might as well try it out. Try it out. I
for
would
sure.
like to thank you for this Q&A event. And thank you for being with us, as well as Mechanical Angel, of course, hosting this event and doing a lot of the pre-work with me together as well.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and then of course you can go to the Steam group. You can download March of War free for playing, and I would definitely suggest it. I would give the game a 9 out of 10 times, not simply because I'm hosting this Q&A for the March of War, but there are really a couple of TBS games, which is turn-based strategy games out there, and this is actually your opportunity to get involved into a major or larger community within the TBS community, and play a game that's actually graphically very good for you as well. Now, next up, we're gonna host the quiz, which you can win prizes as well, in-game prizes, and that's something that we're gonna do with a live chat, so you don't have to be on the forums or something like that. And of course, don't forget to follow this channel. We're gonna take a 5-minute break, and I'll see you in about 5 minutes. Ta-ta!